It was the dead of winter in a small, forgotten town tucked between the pine-covered mountains of Oregon. The air was cold, biting at your skin, and the streets were empty, save for the occasional deer skittering across the snow trying to find shelter. The town of Three Pines was quiet, as if it held its breath every time a storm came through, like it was waiting for something, anything to break the monotony. And on this particular night, something did break the silence, but no one was prepared for it. In the dim light of a single street lamp, a boy stood frozen, staring at a small soaked creature on the side of the road. Noah Hayes, just 10 years old, was used to the quiet life. He had learned to live in the shadows of grief, having lost his mother in a tragic car accident just months earlier. He had learned to speak in whispers to keep his emotions buried deep beneath the surface. But on this night, with the wind howling through the empty streets and the snow falling like a soft, cruel blanket, Noah felt something stir in him, something he hadn't felt in months. His heart, frozen and battered by the loss of his mother, began to beat a little faster. He wasn't alone. There in the snow, barely visible under the glow of the streetlight, was a puppy, a German shepherd barely more than a few months old, lying half buried in the slush, its tiny body shaking from the cold. The dog's eyes, one a warm amber, the other a soft brown, locked onto Noah's. Despite the harshness of the cold, despite the fear that clung to its frame, there was an unmistakable trust in those eyes, a kind of hope. Noah didn't think. He couldn't. All he knew was that this dog needed him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Noah needed help. His hands trembling, he reached down and gently scooped the puppy into his arms. It whimpered softly, nuzzling into his chest as if it recognized that Noah was no longer a stranger. There was no bark of fear, no snapping, just the fragile bond forming between two broken souls. For the first time in months, Noah felt alive. He rushed inside his grandmother's house, the old wood creaking under his hurried steps. His grandmother, Olivia, a woman carved from years of hardship and loss, was sitting by the fire, her silver hair pulled tightly into a bun. Her sharp eyes had seen a lot in her life, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of Noah, breathless, holding a shivering puppy to his chest. "What's this?" Olivia asked, her voice a mix of surprise and concern, but not unkind. "It was outside," Noah said, his voice barely more than a whisper. It's hurt." Olivia's gaze softened for a moment as she looked at the puppy. Her eyes flicked back to Noah, and for the first time in what seemed like forever, she saw something different in him. A spark, a flicker of warmth in a heart that had been locked away for too long. "We'll take care of him," Olivia said, her voice softening. She stood up, the lines of age and grief etched into her face, but her hands still steady and sure as she grabbed an old blanket from the closet. "Thank you," Noah whispered, as if the words were foreign to him, unused. But Olivia had already moved to the stove, where she prepared a bowl of warm water for the puppy to drink. Noah settled on the floor, his fingers gently brushing the dog's fur as it began to relax, the trembling slowing as it took its first steady breaths since the storm had started. For the first time in months, Noah felt his heart beat in rhythm with something. The dog, Rusty, as Noah decided to name him, had saved him in a way Noah hadn't even known he needed. Before we continue, if you're touched by this story of a boy, a dog, and the healing they bring each other, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more incredible stories of hope and survival. Heroes for Animals brings you the heartwarming tales you don't want to miss. That night, as the wind howled outside, Noah lay in bed with Rusty curled up beside him. The puppy's warm body pressed against his side, offering a comfort Noah had never known. He didn't sleep much, but he didn't mind. He listened to the soft, rhythmic breathing of the puppy next to him and felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he thought had long been gone. The world outside was cold, but here in the quiet of the house, warmth was taking root. But little did Noah know this was just the beginning. Because Rusty wasn't just any dog. He wasn't a random stray. There was something about him, something that connected him to a past Noah didn't even know he had. A story that was buried deep, hidden in the snow, waiting to be uncovered. And as Noah would soon find out, their lives, his and Rusty's, were intertwined in ways he never expected. The mysteries of the past were about to come to light, and Noah's world, for better or worse, was about to change forever. Stay tuned for more of this incredible journey, where the power of love, loyalty, and healing will surprise you. The snow kept falling for days, blanketing Three Pines in a silent, perfect stillness. Olivia Hayes had lived in this house for over 30 years, the old wood siding creaking with age and the floorboards whispering memories beneath her feet. But after Noah's mother Claire died in that tragic accident, the house had felt colder than the frozen winds that swept through the town. It had been a long time since the house felt alive. Now with Rusty curled up in the corner by the wood stove, things were starting to change. Noah, for the first time since moving in with Olivia, seemed to have a spark in his eyes again. He woke up earlier, no longer hiding beneath the weight of grief that had cloaked him for months. He helped Olivia with breakfast and made sure Rusty was fed. He even started talking at first in short clipped sentences, but it was something. He started asking Olivia questions about life, about the town, about his mom. The little moments that once seemed so foreign were now slipping back into their routine like pieces of a puzzle that Noah hadn't realized were missing until now. Olivia couldn't help but smile when she saw him out in the yard that morning, tossing a snowball into the air and watching as Rusty chased after it, tumbling in the snow. The puppy's excitement was infectious. Noah's laughter was the sound that had been missing from this house for so long. Olivia watched her hands stilling over a knitting project as the wind blew snowflakes past the window and danced in the air. Isn't it funny how something so small can change everything? Olivia thought, her heart still heavy but lighter than it had been before. She hadn't expected this, the joy of a dog, a stray no less, to crack open the heart of a grieving boy like Noah. She hadn't expected that something so simple could remind her of the warmth of raising a child, even if it was under the shadow of loss. By the time Noah returned to the house, Rusty happily trotting beside him, Olivia had already prepared a warm bowl of oatmeal. It wasn't much, but it was something to nourish both the body and soul. She set the bowls down in front of him with a quiet smile. "Rusty's getting big," Noah said through a mouthful of food, his voice a little steadier than before. He looked at the puppy, who was now sprawled out at Noah's feet, content after a morning of play. "He's been through a lot, but I think he'll be okay now," Olivia said softly, though there was an edge of uncertainty in her voice. She knew something about Rusty was different. She had seen how Noah reacted to the dog, and how the dog in turn seemed to understand Noah's silent pain. It was as if they were two broken pieces of a puzzle, and the dog had somehow found his way to Noah's side. Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just a stray dog showing up at their door. She had seen the way Noah's expression shifted when he looked at Rusty, like the puppy wasn't just a pet, it was a lifeline for both of them. "Do you think it's strange?" Noah asked, suddenly, his eyes flickering to Olivia. "Do I think what's strange?" she asked, setting her knitting down. "The way Rusty found us. I mean, it's like he knew Noah," said, his voice barely a whisper. Olivia paused. She had been thinking about that too. There was something in the way the dog had looked at Noah that night, like it recognized him in a way that Noah himself couldn't understand. "I don't know," Olivia said slowly, looking out the window at the falling snow. "Maybe it's just fate." Noah didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down at the puppy, his fingers gently brushing the dog's fur. "I think I needed him," he murmured. "I think you both needed each other," Olivia said, her voice quiet but certain. But there was a part of Olivia that couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story than Noah could ever know. She didn't want to scare him with her thoughts, but the way Rusty had shown up out of nowhere on that stormy night, it felt like something more than just a random event. The days turned into weeks, and Rusty began to settle into life with Noah and Olivia. The puppy grew stronger, his fur growing thicker, as he adjusted to his new life in the small town. He followed Noah everywhere, into the woods around the yard, and even into the kitchen where he sat at Noah's feet while he did his homework. Rusty was always there, a constant presence that filled the empty spaces in the house. Olivia began to notice a change in herself too. She had never been one for sentimentality, but there was something about Noah and Rusty that reminded her of her daughter Claire. The way the boy had always been so quiet, so withdrawn after the accident, was beginning to fade. He smiled more now. He laughed more. He even began asking Olivia to tell him stories about his mother, about the woman he had lost, before he even had the chance to really know her. Olivia had never been one to talk much about Claire's death. She had kept that grief buried deep, not wanting to face it. But now for Noah, she started sharing pieces of her memories, small, simple things about Claire when she was a little girl. "She always used to tell me she was going to find a castle in the woods," Olivia said one evening, sitting across from Noah as he ate his dinner. "A castle?" Noah asked, his eyes wide. "Yes, a castle," Olivia chuckled softly. She used to think if she walked far enough into the woods, she would find one. "Did she ever find it?" Noah asked, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "No," Olivia said with a smile, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "But she never stopped looking for it." Noah looked down at Rusty, who was curled up at his feet, his eyes half closed in contentment. "Maybe I'll find something like that too," he said quietly. Olivia's heart tightened as she looked at Noah. She realized that in this small town with its quiet streets and snow-covered hills, Noah was starting to find his way back to life. And somehow, Rusty had been the key to unlocking that door. The weeks passed, and with each one, the bond between Noah and Rusty grew stronger. But something else was happening too. Olivia began to notice strange things in the woods around their house. Footprints large and deep would appear in the fresh snow, as if something had been watching. She didn't tell Noah. She didn't want to scare him. But she couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that had begun to settle in the pit of her stomach. And then one cold afternoon, something happened that would change everything. The winds had settled, but the snow didn't stop. It was almost as if the world outside was hushing, wrapping everything in a blanket of soft, deceptive silence. The kind of silence that lulls you into thinking nothing could go wrong, only for the darkness to reveal its secrets when you least expect it. Olivia stood by the window looking out into the yard where Noah and Rusty played. The soft flakes fell steadily, blanketing everything in a thick coat of white. Life had fallen into a predictable rhythm. Noah was smiling more, laughing again in a way he hadn't in months. Rusty had become his constant companion, following him everywhere, tail wagging with a kind of energy that made everything feel lighter. The puppy had become part of their family, and though Olivia couldn't shake the strange feelings she had about the woods, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could be okay again. But there was always something lurking beneath the surface. Olivia couldn't forget about the carvings. The figures that had appeared out of nowhere in the woods, wooden animals, delicate and precise, but without any markings. The mystery of it had unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. And now the fox figurine on the mantel seemed like a message, an invitation, or maybe a warning. Isn't it funny, Olivia thought to herself as she continued to stare out the window. How a life can change so quickly. Just a few months ago, she had felt so lost, so disconnected from everything. And now here she was, watching her grandson play with a puppy in the yard, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known since Claire had died. But the truth was, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to shift again. There were things she didn't know, things that had been hidden for far too long, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever was coming. Noah had been spending more time in the woods lately, taking Rusty for walks, exploring the trails that wound through the dense forest surrounding their home. It wasn't unusual for a boy his age to want to explore, but Olivia couldn't help the tight knot that formed in her stomach every time he left the house with Rusty by his side. The woods had a way of drawing people in, and there was something about the way Noah seemed to disappear into the trees that made her uneasy. One afternoon, as the sky grew darker and the wind picked up again, Noah came rushing into the house, panting, his face pale. Rusty was at his heels, his tail between his legs, looking more unsettled than usual. "Grandma, we need to talk," Noah said, his voice shaky. Olivia stood up immediately, her heart racing. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "No," Noah said, his breath still coming in sharp gasps. "But I saw something, or someone." He looked over his shoulder as if expecting someone, or something, to be following him. "What do you mean you saw someone?" Olivia asked, her voice steady but her hands shaking as she reached for the kettle on the stove. "I was walking along the trail like usual," Noah began, his voice growing more anxious. "And I saw a man. He was standing in the woods just watching me. He didn't say anything, but I could feel him staring at me." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. She had known that something wasn't right, but hearing it from Noah confirmed the feeling that had been gnawing at her for weeks. "What did he look like?" she asked carefully, trying to keep her voice calm. "He was tall, and he had a beard kind of scruffy, like he hadn't shaved in a while." Noah set his eyes wide with fear. "He didn't move. He just stood there watching me. I couldn't see his face very well because it was kind of dark, but it felt like he was waiting for something." Olivia could feel the tension building inside her. She didn't want to panic, but this wasn't just some random person in the woods. The feeling that had been growing in her gut was turning into something much stronger, much darker. "Did he say anything to you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice as steady as possible. "No," Noah replied, shaking his head. "But when I turned to walk back, I saw him move. He stepped out from behind a tree like he was following me. I ran home as fast as I could, but I don't know. I don't know who he was. Olivia felt the color drain from her face. She tried to hide it, but the fear she felt was evident in her eyes. You did the right thing, Noah. Never go into the woods alone, especially not with someone watching you. Noah nodded, his eyes still wide. Rusty, usually full of energy, was now cowering at his feet, his ears flattened against his head. It was clear that the puppy had sensed something was off too. Olivia stepped closer to Noah, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. You're safe now, okay? No one is going to hurt you, but we need to be careful. This man you saw, he's not just someone passing through. There's something wrong here. Noah looked up at her, his face full of confusion. What do you mean, Grandma? I don't know yet, Olivia admitted, her voice low. But I've been feeling like something's been off in these woods for a while. I thought it was just my imagination, but now I'm not so sure. That night, as the snow continued to fall outside, Olivia couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her mind racing with thoughts of the man Noah had seen in the woods. Who was he? What was he doing there? And why had he been watching Noah? She knew she needed answers, but she also knew that uncovering the truth might come with a price. The woods had always been a place of mystery, a place where the past seemed to linger, even in the silence of winter. The next morning, she made up her mind. She was going into town to speak with the sheriff. She had to know if anyone else had seen this man or if there had been any reports of strange happenings in the woods. Noah wasn't going to be the only one to face whatever was lurking out there. But just as she was about to leave the house, she heard it faint at first but growing louder. A voice calling from the woods. Olivia. Her breath caught in her throat. She froze, her hand gripping the doorknob. The voice was familiar, too familiar. It sounded like someone she hadn't heard from in years, someone she never thought she'd hear from again. Before she could react, the sound of footsteps crunching in the snow outside her door grew louder. Someone was coming. And this time, Olivia wasn't sure if she was ready to face whatever was on the other side of that door. The snowstorm had intensified by the time Olivia stepped outside, her breath forming clouds in the bitter cold air. The voice that had called her name still echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of the past she thought she had buried long ago. Her heart raced as she glanced around, searching the yard, the trees, but the snow was thick, the world around her muted by the storm's fury. For a brief moment, she wondered if her mind had simply played a trick on her. But deep down, she knew it wasn't her imagination. The voice was real, and it had called her name. Olivia! Her knees felt weak beneath her, but she steadied herself against the doorframe. The wind howled again, sending another gust of snow swirling around her feet. She reached for the coat she'd left on the hook by the door, wrapping it tightly around herself as she stepped out into the snow. The air was cold enough to freeze her thoughts, but she pushed them aside. She had to know who had spoken. The snow was relentless now, making it hard to see past the first few feet in front of her. The world felt distant, muffled, as if she were stepping into a dream she could not wake from. Her mind flashed back to her earlier thoughts of Elias, the man she had seen briefly in the woods, and of the carvings that had appeared out of nowhere. They were all connected. Somehow they were all connected. As she stepped into the yard, her eyes scanned the perimeter. No one, no sound, nothing. But then, just as she turned to head back toward the door, she saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the woods. He was tall, almost impossibly tall, and his posture was rigid, unyielding. The snow seemed to fall around him, but never touched him, as if the earth itself was unwilling to acknowledge his presence. His face was obscured by a hood, but Olivia knew immediately who it was. Elias. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a moment she considered retreating back into the safety of her home. But she didn't. She couldn't. She needed answers. Elias, she called out, her voice strong, despite the fear clawing at her chest. The man did not move. He just stood there, watching her with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. The silence between them stretched on for what felt like hours, but Olivia forced herself to remain calm. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice low but firm. "What do you want from us?" Elias did not respond right away. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his boots crunching softly in the snow. His movements were deliberate, almost predatory. It was like he knew something she didn't, something she wasn't ready to learn. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and gravelly, the words slipping through the air like cold whispers. "I've been watching you," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Both of you. I knew he would come for you." Who? Olivia asked, her heart racing. She knew the answer, but she didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to face the truth. The man in the woods, Elias, said, his tone almost mocking. He's not just a stranger, he's someone from your past, someone who should have stayed buried. Olivia took a step back, her breath caught in her throat. She felt the weight of his words settle on her chest, and it was all she could do to keep standing. The man in the woods. He wasn't just anyone. He was someone connected to her, someone she had tried to forget. Who is he? She demanded, her voice shaking. Why is he here? Elias took another step forward, his eyes softening for the first time. He's a part of your past, Olivia, a part that you've tried to hide, but he's been waiting for the right moment to come back. Her mind raced, her thoughts spiraling as she tried to piece together the fragments of her memories. She thought of Claire, of her late husband, and of the secrets they had kept buried in the past, but nothing made sense. The pieces didn't fit. I don't understand, Olivia whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. What do you mean? Elias sighed as if this conversation had gone on long enough. The man in the woods is the reason your family left, the reason you lost everything, and now he's come back to finish what was started. Olivia's heart sank as the weight of his words hit her like a freight train. It all began to click: the strange carvings, the unsettling presence in the woods, the feeling that something had been watching her for so long. It wasn't just about Noah and Rusty. This was about something much bigger, something that had been buried for years, and now it was coming back to haunt her. He's connected to Claire, isn't he? Olivia asked, her voice cracking as she spoke her daughter's name. Elias nodded, his expression grim. He's been waiting for the right time, and now that you're here with Noah with the dog, he knows his time has come. Who is he? Olivia demanded, her fists clenched at her sides. Tell me who he is. Elias's eyes darkened. He's someone you thought you could forget, Olivia. Someone you left behind. But now he's come to claim what's his. The silence between them grew thick, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Olivia wanted to scream, to run, but she knew she couldn't. This was the moment she had been dreading, the moment when the past caught up with her. Where is he? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Where is he now? Elias didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a final deliberate step toward her, and for the first time, Olivia felt a wave of understanding wash over her. She knew the truth. She didn't need to hear it from Elias. She had known it all along. The man in the woods was someone she had left behind, someone she had tried to forget. And now he was back, bringing with him the weight of all the secrets she had buried. He's out there, Elias said, his voice like a warning, and he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants. As the words settled between them, the wind howled louder, the snow falling heavier. Olivia's mind raced as the reality of the situation set in. The past had come back to haunt her, and there was no escaping it now. Who are you really? Olivia demanded, her voice sharp. What do you want with us? Elias paused for a moment, his eyes lingering on hers. I'm just a messenger, Olivia. I'm here to show you the way. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. Before she could respond, Elias turned and walked back toward the woods, disappearing into the thickening snow. Olivia stood there, her body trembling as the storm raged around her. She was no longer alone in her fight. The truth was out there waiting for her, and there was no turning back now. The following morning, Olivia awoke to the sound of the wind howling outside her window, but it wasn't the wind that kept her up. It was the feeling that had been gnawing at her since Elias left the yard the night before. She lay there in the quiet, dark room, the faint glow of early morning creeping through the curtains, and she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Noah was still asleep, his soft breaths coming in steady rhythm beside her. She had to keep him safe. That was all that mattered now. But how could she protect him when the past had returned, dragging its secrets with it? The truth had hit her like a ton of bricks. Elias had known. He knew everything. The carvings, the strange events in the woods, the eerie presence that had lingered in their home. It was all connected to something long buried, something that had taken root in her past, and now it had come back with a vengeance. She sat up slowly, the weight of everything pressing down on her chest. There was no more time for running, no more time for pretending like the past didn't have a hold on her. The man in the woods was real. He was the ghost of everything she had tried to forget, and he wasn't going to stop until he got what he wanted. The sound of rustling brought Olivia out of her thoughts, and she turned to see Noah, his messy hair falling over his eyes, rubbing the sleep out of his face. "Morning, Grandma," he mumbled, his voice still thick with sleep. His eyes darted around the room, searching for something familiar. and then he looked at her with a kind of understanding that took Olivia by surprise. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft. She hesitated, not sure how to answer him. "Yeah," she said, finally forcing a smile. "Just thinking." Noah stared at her for a moment, sensing the heaviness in the air. He had always been perceptive even when he was younger, and now it seemed like he could see through her more easily than ever. "I'm scared," he admitted quietly, looking down at the floor. "I don't like what happened yesterday. The man in the woods. It doesn't feel right." Olivia's heart ached as she looked at him. He was just a boy, and yet he had seen so much more than any child should ever have to. It wasn't fair. "I know, sweetheart," Olivia said, gently pulling him close. "I know, but you're safe here with me, and nothing is going to hurt you." Noah clung to her, his small frame shaking. She kissed the top of his head, holding him close. She wasn't sure if she believed the words she had just said, but she had to. She had to believe that they could survive this, whatever this was. The day passed slowly, each moment stretching longer than the last. Olivia stayed close to Noah, keeping him occupied with small tasks around the house, trying to keep the tension from creeping back in. But the uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach refused to go away. As evening fell, Olivia couldn't ignore it any longer. She had to confront the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. She had to go into town and speak to the sheriff. Noah was in his room trying to distract himself with a book when Olivia grabbed her coat and stepped out the door. The cold air hit her instantly, biting into her skin. She pulled the coat tighter around herself and walked down the path toward the town. The town of Three Pines had always been a quiet, peaceful place, but lately it felt like something had shifted. Something dark had taken root, and Olivia wasn't sure if she was strong enough to fight it. When she reached the sheriff's office, she hesitated for a moment before pushing the door open. The warm air inside hit her like a wave, and she took a deep breath before approaching the front desk. Sheriff Jenkins, a man who had been in town for as long as Olivia could remember, looked up from his paperwork as she stepped inside. "Olivia," he said, his voice low but kind. "What brings you in today?" "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice shaking despite herself. "It's about the man in the woods." Sheriff Jenkins raised an eyebrow. "What about him?" Olivia glanced around the room, making sure no one else was listening. "I know who he is," she said quietly, "and I think he's a danger to us all." Jenkins leaned forward, his expression hardening. "What do you mean, who is he?" Olivia took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "He's someone from my past. A part of my life I thought was behind me. But now he's back, and I don't know how much longer we have before he does something. Something terrible." The sheriff was silent for a moment, studying her with a careful look. "I don't know what you're talking about, Olivia, but if there's a real threat, I need to know about it." Olivia nodded. "I'm telling you, Sheriff, he's been watching us. He's been waiting for the right moment to strike, and I think that moment is now." Jenkins looked at her for a long time before speaking again. "We'll get this figured out, but we need to know more. You say he's from your past. Can you tell me who he is?" Olivia hesitated. She knew she had to say it, but the words felt like they were choking her. "His name is Tom Miller." The sheriff's face changed the moment she spoke his name. It was subtle, but Olivia could see the recognition flicker in his eyes. He knew who Tom Miller was. "Tom Miller," the sheriff repeated slowly, his voice quiet. "What are you saying, Olivia? You're telling me Tom's back in town?" She nodded, her heart pounding. "He never really left, Sheriff. He's been hiding out in the woods, waiting for the right time to come back. And now he's come for me." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Why would he come for you? What does he want?" Olivia swallowed hard, her mind racing. She couldn't explain it all, not yet, but she had to warn him. She had to make him understand that this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Noah and Rusty and the entire town. "Because of what happened?" she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because of what we did, or what we didn't do." The sheriff stood up slowly, his face grim. "I'll look into it, Olivia, but we need to act fast. If Tom Miller's back, things aren't going to be quiet for long." Olivia nodded, fear creeping into her chest. She knew this was just the beginning. Whatever Tom wanted, whatever he was planning, it wasn't over. It had only just begun. As she left the sheriff's office, the weight of everything hit her all at once. She had warned them. She had done everything she could to protect Noah. But now it was out of her hands. The past had come back to claim them, and there was no going back. The snow fell relentlessly through the night, as if nature itself was bearing the past under its thick, icy veil. By morning, Olivia could hardly see past the edge of the porch. The world had turned into a vast, cold wilderness. The trees coated in layers of white, the ground blanketed as if no one had ever walked there before. The wind howled, sending flurries through the air, making the cold seem like an invisible presence creeping inside the house. Olivia stood at the window staring out at the blizzard. Her mind was a swirl of thoughts of Tom Miller, of the sheriff's reaction when she told him his name, and most of all, of Noah. He had been so calm when he told her about seeing the man in the woods. But now, as the weight of the situation settled in, she could feel the tension growing between them. She had to keep him safe no matter what it took. Noah was still sleeping, the covers pulled tightly around him, a faint trace of a smile on his lips as he dreamt. She watched him for a moment, wondering how long it would take before the nightmare started. How long before the fear would catch up with him too? She hoped it wouldn't be soon. She hoped he could hold on to this fragile sense of normalcy for just a little while longer. Her gaze shifted to the mantel where the carved figures still sat, each one a silent reminder of the mystery that had taken root in their lives. The fox, the bear, the shepherd dog. All of them left behind by Elias, a man who seemed as much a part of the woods as the trees themselves. She didn't know what his role was in all this, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was a part of something bigger than they could understand. The knock on the door startled her out of her thoughts. She had been expecting it. She had known someone would come. Slowly, she crossed the room and opened the door to find Sheriff Jenkins standing there, his face grim, his coat covered in snowflakes. Behind him stood Frank Tully, the local handyman who had worked in Three Pines for as long as anyone could remember. Frank was a man of few words, but his presence spoke volumes. Olivia, Sheriff Jenkins said, his voice low and steady. "We need to talk." Olivia stepped aside, letting them in. The warmth of the house seemed to settle over them, but it did little to ease the tension in her chest. She closed the door behind them and turned back to face the sheriff. "What's happened?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jenkins pulled off his coat, shaking the snow off, and took a seat by the fire. Frank remained standing by the door, his eyes scanning the room, never staying still for too long. Olivia felt his gaze on her, and for a moment it made her uncomfortable, as if he were silently assessing her in a way she didn't want. "Tom Miller's been spotted," Jenkins said, his tone serious. "I've got a few men out searching the woods. We're trying to track him down before he gets any closer to town." Olivia felt her pulse quicken. She'd known it was only a matter of time, but hearing the sheriff say it out loud made it all too real. Tom Miller was out there waiting, and if he had been watching Noah, as she feared, it was only a matter of time before he made his move. "What's he planning?" she asked, her voice tight. She didn't need to ask who Tom was. She knew the answer. "We don't know yet," Jenkins replied, rubbing his hands together by the fire. "But we're not taking any chances. He's dangerous, Olivia. He's been in and out of the system for years, but this time it's different. I've got a feeling he's after something, or someone." Olivia's thoughts raced. She wanted to ask more, wanted to know everything, but she had a feeling that there was more to this than the sheriff was letting on. She didn't press him for details, though. She could see the worry in his eyes, the weight of the situation on his shoulders. "I don't think it's just about me anymore," she said quietly, glancing toward the hallway where Noah was still asleep. "I think he's after Noah. I think he's trying to get to us through him." Frank shifted uncomfortably by the door, his rough hands resting on his hips. "He's been around, hasn't he?" Frank's voice was low, gruff. "I've seen the way the boy's been looking at the woods lately. There's something in the air around here. Something's been off for weeks." Olivia turned to Frank, her mind spinning. "What do you mean, what's off?" "I don't know," Frank muttered. "It's just a feeling. But you've seen it too, haven't you? The way things are changing around here. The carvings, the footprints. People don't just leave those things behind, not unless they've got something they want to say." The room grew still. Olivia thought about the carvings, about the strange figures that had appeared in the woods. There was something almost otherworldly about them. She couldn't explain it, but there was no denying the fact that they felt like a message, like someone was trying to communicate something that wasn't meant to be understood by the living. Sheriff Jenkins cleared his throat. "We've got a plan to flush him out, but we need your help, Olivia." She looked up at him, confused. "My help? What do you mean?" "We need to keep Noah safe. We're setting up a perimeter around the town, but we need someone to stay here with him. Make sure he's not alone." Olivia's heart sank. She had been afraid of this. The thought of leaving Noah alone with all of this hanging over them made her stomach churn. But she couldn't refuse. He was her responsibility, and she would do whatever it took to keep him safe. "I'll stay," she said firmly, her decision made. "I won't let anything happen to him." Jenkins nodded, a sense of relief passing over his face. "Good. We'll handle the rest. If Tom Miller comes near this house, we'll be ready." Frank opened his mouth to say something but hesitated. "You're not alone in this, Olivia," he said, his voice softer than usual. "We're all here for you, for Noah." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat as she looked at the two men. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she wasn't carrying this burden alone. There were people who cared, people who would help her fight whatever was coming. But even with their support, she knew that the battle ahead was going to be like nothing they had ever faced before. As the sheriff and Frank left, Olivia turned back to the house, her thoughts heavy with the weight of everything that had been revealed. She had to stay strong for Noah. She had to protect him. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was just beginning. And when it came, it would be more than just a battle for survival. It would be a fight for everything she held dear. The door creaked as Noah emerged from his room, his eyes still heavy with sleep. He looked at her, and for a brief moment, their gazes met. He didn't ask any questions. He didn't need to. Instead, he simply walked over and stood beside her, his hand slipping into hers. Together, they stood there staring out at the snow-covered world, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it as one. The days had passed slowly since Sheriff Jenkins and Frank Tully had left. The air had grown heavier, and Olivia could feel it in her bones. The calm that had settled over the house after they had planned their search around the town seemed too quiet. Noah had stayed close, glued to her side most days, while Rusty followed them both, his protective nature becoming more apparent with each passing hour. The house, once filled with the quiet sounds of daily life, now felt like a tense waiting room. Olivia's eyes kept drifting to the windows, her thoughts always pulled toward the woods. She had hoped for some sign, some small piece of peace, but the only thing she felt now was the nagging certainty that Tom Miller was out there, waiting. Noah seemed to sense it too. His mood had shifted. He was quieter than usual, his eyes scanning the trees outside when he thought no one was looking. She had caught him staring at the path that led into the woods more than once, his brow furrowed, a mix of curiosity and unease in his gaze. He knew something was wrong, even if he didn't understand it completely. But there was something else, a deeper sense of fear. It wasn't just the man in the woods that bothered her. It was the feeling that she couldn't protect him, not from everything. She wasn't prepared for whatever Tom Miller had in store. But that didn't matter now. She had made a promise to keep Noah safe, and she wasn't going to break it. That night, as the wind picked up again, Olivia sat in the living room watching the flames flicker in the hearth. The house was dim, the only light coming from the fire, and the faint glow of the lamp beside her. Noah had gone to bed earlier, exhausted from the constant tension that had followed them all day. Rusty lay by the door, his eyes half open, as if on alert. Olivia's thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound, a soft knock at the door. It was so quiet she almost didn't hear it over the howling wind. But there it was again, this time louder. A knock, 3 short taps. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't expect anyone, especially not in the middle of the storm. Her first instinct was to hesitate, to think before opening the door. But she knew she had to. She had to face this head on. She grabbed the shotgun she had hidden by the door, the cold metal a comfort in her hands. She took a deep breath and with cautious steps walked toward the door. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice strong despite the racing of her heart. No answer came, just the sound of the wind pushing against the door. She tightened her grip on the shotgun, her pulse quickening. With a steady hand, she pulled the door open, just a crack, her eyes scanning the yard. The figure standing outside was almost a silhouette against the snowstorm. His face was hidden beneath a heavy coat and hood, but Olivia knew who it was before he spoke. Olivia, the voice was low, familiar, but cold. "I think it's time we had a talk." Her stomach dropped as she stepped back, her hand tightening on the shotgun. "Tom," she said, the name coming out in a rasp. "What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, his boots crunching in the snow as he approached. "I've been waiting for you to let me in," he said, his voice dark. "You've been running from the past for so long, Olivia. It's time you faced it." Olivia's mind raced, but her body was frozen. She had never been more afraid in her life. The man who had haunted her memories, the one who had broken her world apart, was standing on her doorstep. "I've kept my distance," Olivia said, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "You need to leave. Whatever this is, whatever you think you're doing, it ends now." Tom's laugh echoed through the night, cold and hollow. You think you can keep me out? He took another step forward, his eyes narrowing. You think this house is a barrier? You think your little boy, your new life, will keep me from getting what's mine? Get away from here, Tom. Olivia demanded, her voice hard now. You don't have a place here anymore. But Tom wasn't listening. His gaze flicked past her, scanning the house behind her. You think you've forgotten, but I know. I know you. And I know what's at stake. It's not just about me, Olivia. It's about everything we lost. His voice dropped to a whisper. It's about what's still yours. Olivia's breath hitched. What was he talking about? What did he mean? She didn't know. But she knew one thing. She couldn't let him in. Not now. Not ever again. You need to leave. Now, Olivia said, her voice breaking, but her resolve firm. I'm not afraid of you anymore. For a moment, Tom just stood there staring at her with cold eyes. Then he shook his head, almost like he was disappointed. You think you're strong, don't you? He said, his voice a low growl. But you're just like the rest of them, weak, trying to bury the past. But the past doesn't go away. It stays with you, always. With a final look, Tom turned and walked back into the storm. Olivia slammed the door shut, locking it behind her. She stood there for a moment, listening to the wind howl outside. Her heart was still racing, her body trembling from the confrontation. But she couldn't afford to be weak. Not now. She took a few steps back, her hand still gripping the shotgun. She couldn't believe it. He was here. Tom Miller had come back, and everything she had tried to protect, everything she had built, was now in jeopardy. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound coming from the hallway. She turned quickly to see Noah standing in the doorway, his face, pale eyes wide with fear. Grandma, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. What's happening? Who was that? Olivia took a deep breath, steadying herself. She couldn't let him see how much fear was inside her. Not now. It's nothing, sweetheart. Just an old acquaintance. He's gone now. Noah didn't move. He stood there for a moment, his eyes searching hers for any hint of the truth. Then he nodded slowly, his small figure looking so vulnerable in the doorway. I'm here, Grandma, he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. Olivia's heart ached as she walked over to him, pulling him into a tight hug. She hadn't realized just how much she had been holding in until that moment. With Noah in her arms, she felt like maybe they could survive this together. But the feeling was fleeting, because deep down, Olivia knew this was only the beginning. Tom Miller wasn't going to stop, not until he got what he wanted. And now Olivia had to make sure she was ready for whatever came next. The storm raged on the wind, picking up as the snow fell in thick sheets, creating a thick veil that seemed to swallow the world whole. Olivia stood by the window, her eyes scanning the yard, looking for any sign of movement, any clue that might tell her what Tom Miller's next move would be. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there somewhere in the snow-covered woods waiting. Noah had gone back to his room after their conversation, but Olivia could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She couldn't protect him forever. She couldn't keep him safe from everything, but she had to try. For him, for herself, for the family that had once been whole, but had now been shattered by the ghosts of the past. The doorbell rang, pulling her from her thoughts. Olivia froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. Who could it be? Sheriff Jenkins Frank, or worse, Tom Miller coming back for more? With trembling hands, she grabbed the shotgun again, its cold metal comforting in her grip. She moved slowly, quietly as she approached the door. A glance through the peephole confirmed what she had feared. A familiar figure stood on the doorstep, Elias, the man who had left the carvings in the woods, the man who seemed to know more about her past than she was comfortable with. And now it seemed he had come for something that she wasn't ready to face. She opened the door, her expression guarded. Elias stood there, his tall figure cloaked in a heavy coat, his face partially obscured by the hood. His eyes, however, were as piercing as ever, filled with a knowledge that made Olivia uneasy. Olivia, he said softly, his voice carrying a strange weight. We need to talk. Olivia stepped aside, motioning for him to enter. She didn't know what he wanted, but she knew she couldn't turn him away. Not now. Not when everything was falling apart. Elias entered the house without another word, his boots leaving prints on the floor as he moved further inside. He glanced at the fire in the hearth, his eyes lingering on the warmth of the flames before turning back to her. I wasn't sure you would let me in, he said, his tone almost wistful. But I knew you would have no choice. Olivia closed the door behind him, her mind spinning. What do you mean, why are you here? Elias didn't immediately respond. He took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, as if choosing his words carefully. "I'm here to warn you," he said finally. "Things are much worse than you think. The man you've been running from, Tom Miller, he's not just after you. He's after everything." Olivia's stomach twisted at the mention of Tom's name. She had known there was more to the story than Elias had let on, but hearing him say it out loud made the danger feel all too real. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice tight. "Why is he doing this?" Elias shifted his weight, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because you're connected. You and Noah both. Tom was always waiting for the right time to come back, and now that he knows you're here, he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants." "Why us?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling with frustration. "Why now?" "Because of what you left behind," Elias said, his voice low. "Because of what you and your family tried to bury." Olivia felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "What are you talking about? What are you saying?" Elias paused for a moment, his gaze shifting to the window, where the snow fell steadily outside. "You know as well as I do, Olivia, that the past doesn't stay buried forever. And when it does rise again, it's more dangerous than you could ever imagine." The room felt colder now, the fire flickering as if it too was uncertain about what was happening. Olivia could feel the weight of his words settling on her chest, each one a heavy stone. But still, she didn't understand. Why was Tom Miller coming after her? What had she done that could have caused this? "I don't know what you mean," Olivia whispered almost to herself. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Elias took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "You've been running from this for too long, Olivia. But you can't run anymore. You can't keep hiding from what you've done. It's time to face the truth." At that moment, the silence was broken by the faint sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. Noah appeared at the bottom of the staircase, his face pale, his eyes wide with uncertainty. "Grandma," he asked, his voice shaky, "what's going on?" Olivia looked at Elias, then back at her grandson. She hadn't intended for Noah to overhear any of this. He was too young to understand the full extent of what was happening, too innocent to be dragged into the mess that was her past. "Nothing, sweetheart," Olivia said quickly, rushing over to him. She crouched down, placing her hands on his shoulders, trying to shield him from the truth. "You should go back to your room for now." But Noah didn't move. Instead, he looked up at Elias, his eyes searching. "Who is this?" Elias took a step back, his gaze softening as he looked at Noah. "I'm a friend," he said, his voice gentle. But there was something in his eyes, something that made Olivia uneasy. Noah didn't seem convinced. "What are you really here for?" Elias remained silent for a long moment before answering. "I'm here to help you, Noah, and your grandmother. I'm here to make sure you survive what's coming." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "What's coming?" she whispered, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. Elias turned to face her, his expression more serious than she had ever seen it. "What's coming is something you can't escape. It's time to confront the past, Olivia. Time to stop pretending it's not there. Because if you don't do something about it now, it's going to destroy everything you love." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow, and she staggered back, almost losing her balance. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How was she supposed to fight this? How was she supposed to protect Noah from something she didn't understand? Grandma, Noah asked again, his voice breaking through her thoughts. "What's going on?" Olivia didn't answer right away. She couldn't. She wasn't sure she had the strength to explain it all. But she knew one thing: she couldn't protect Noah by running anymore. She couldn't keep pretending that everything would be okay if she just hid. It was time to face the truth. It was time to confront the ghost that had haunted her for so long. She turned to Elias, her expression hardening. "Tell me what I need to do," she said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. "Tell me how to stop this." Elias nodded slowly, a knowing look in his eyes. "We begin with the truth, and once you understand it, you'll know what to do next." The truth. Olivia had no idea what that meant, but she was about to find out. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with tension. Olivia stood by the fire, her thoughts swirling around Elias's words. She couldn't deny the truth any longer. The past, the things she had tried so hard to bury, had come rushing back, demanding to be faced. Tom Miller, the man who had torn her life apart, wasn't just a memory now. He was real, and he was coming for them. Noah had retreated to his room after Elias's cryptic statement, though he couldn't hide the worry in his eyes. Olivia had tried to shield him from the full weight of it all, but she could tell he knew something was wrong. His curiosity would drive him to search for answers, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could protect him from the truth. Elias had said they had to confront the past. But how? How could she undo the damage that had been done? And more importantly, how could she keep Noah safe when the very thing she feared was coming after him? She looked down at the carvings again. The fox, the shepherd dog, the bear, each one a reminder of something deeper, something hidden. Elias hadn't just left those figures for her, he had left them for Noah too. They were a puzzle, a message, a warning. And Olivia realized with a shiver that she had been too focused on the wrong parts of the puzzle to see the whole picture. The truth was starting to unfold, but it wasn't the kind of truth you could prepare for. It wasn't just about Tom Miller. It was about the decisions she'd made, the lies she'd told, and the secrets she'd tried so hard to keep buried. But in the end, she couldn't escape it. She couldn't hide from it anymore. Olivia Elias's voice broke through her thoughts. He was still standing by the window, his hands tucked into his coat pockets, as he looked out at the snow-covered world beyond. "It's time." Olivia took a deep breath. Time for what? Elias turned to face her, his eyes intense. Time to confront him. Time to face what you've been running from. Her heart skipped a beat. "I'm not ready for this. I don't know how to fight him." "You don't fight him by running away," Elias said, his voice soft but firm. "You fight him by standing your ground, by understanding what he wants, and by showing him that he doesn't have control over you anymore." Olivia felt her stomach twist at his words. She knew he was right, but knowing it and doing it were two very different things. She had spent years running from her past, running from Tom Miller, running from the things she didn't want to face. But now it was time to stop running. Now it was time to stand tall, face the truth, and protect the only thing that mattered. "Noah," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I have to protect him. I can't lose him too." Elias nodded, his gaze softening. "You won't. But you need to understand what's at stake here. It's not just about keeping him safe. It's about showing him that the past doesn't define him, that he can make his own choices, that he can have a future." Olivia's heart ached. "I've tried to give him that. I've tried to make sure he doesn't grow up like I did. But how do I teach him to be strong when I'm afraid to face the things that scare me most?" Elias's eyes were filled with understanding, but there was no pity in them. "We're all afraid, Olivia, but courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about moving forward in spite of it." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had spent so long running, so long pretending that she wasn't afraid, that she had forgotten what it meant to be truly brave. It wasn't about pushing away fear. It was about accepting it, facing it, and doing what needed to be done despite it. "I'm ready," Olivia said finally, her voice stronger than she had ever felt it. "I'll face him. I'll do whatever it takes to protect Noah." Elias gave her a nod of approval. "Good. But remember, this is just the beginning. You won't defeat him in one battle. It will take everything you have. But if you do it right, you'll have something more powerful than fear on your side." "What's that?" Olivia asked, though she already knew the answer. "Love," Elias replied softly. "The kind of love that gives you the strength to keep fighting no matter what." Later that night, as the snow continued to fall, Olivia sat with Noah at the kitchen table. The house was eerily quiet, the only sound the crackle of the fire in the living room. She had told him everything, or at least as much as he could understand. The truth about Tom Miller, the truth about the past she had tried so hard to forget. Noah didn't say much after she finished speaking. He had simply listened, his gaze unwavering. When she was done, he had simply nodded and said, "We'll stop him, right, Grandma?" Olivia's heart swelled with pride. For all the fear she had seen in his eyes, for all the uncertainty, there was something in Noah that still believed in the possibility of victory. He believed that they could face this together. And in that moment, she realized that maybe he was the one who was going to show her the way. "Yeah," Olivia said softly, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "We'll stop him." And she meant it. The next few days passed in a blur. The snow didn't stop, and neither did their preparations. Sheriff Jenkins had organized a small group of men to help, but Olivia knew that the final confrontation would happen on her terms. She was ready to face Tom Miller head on. She was ready to show him that he didn't have the power to control her anymore. As she walked through the woods one last time, her footsteps crunching in the snow, she could feel it. The weight of everything, the weight of the past. But this time it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a promise to herself, a promise to Noah. She wouldn't let Tom win, not now, not ever. Thank you all for following Olivia and Noah's journey as they faced their fears and uncovered the truth hidden in the past. Their story isn't just about survival, it's about strength, love, and the courage to stand tall in the face of everything that tries to tear us down. What do you think is the most powerful force in overcoming fear? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts and continue this conversation with you. Thank you for being part of this story.